And what's up, guys? And welcome back to Coast Gridiron, a football podcast. On this episode, I have a very, very special guest. 8-year Lion, 8-year BC Lion, SFU alum, now does color analyst on the radio for the BC Lions. I have Giulio Caravatta come on the podcast. Um, for what was supposed to be no longer than an hour, 30, 40 minutes. Um, Wanted to come on, just let the audience get to know a little bit more about Giulio, and his background his from when he first started playing football, his early days, his high school days, then his journey from Etobicoke, Ontario, all the way to Simon Fraser University, on a football scholarship. Ends up being an undrafted free agent to the BC Lions, making himself a 8-year pro career. And I originally wanted to have Giulio on to, like I said, let the people get to know a little bit more about him. But then I really wanted to talk about the current Lions and the current roster, and just now the free agency has kind of settled down. The first kind of wave, the second kind of wave. Now there's kind of a few guys out there maybe, but I wouldn't expect too many other signings, other than maybe just the draft class coming up, I believe in a few months here. So like I said, turned out to be 2-hour conversation with Giulio, but it was a good one. I think you guys will really enjoy it. I think we covered a lot. It was a nice peek behind the curtain of who Giulio is and kind of his experience in pro football, and then just his kind of opinion on the current roster and kind of how it's shaped up after free agency and with everybody kind of returning on the Lions roster. Um, Other than that, you guys will see me. I have another guest lined up for next week, Wednesday next week. I will have that episode hopefully uploaded by the weekend. That'll be March 3rd, I believe, early March. I hope to have that episode up. Um, Other than that, enjoy this episode. Please be sure to like, comment, subscribe on the YouTube. Be sure to like, follow, download the episodes on Apple Podcasts, leave a review. And because it was so long, I will cut right to the interview. And we won't wait along too long. And I'll catch you guys on the next one. So thank you for tuning in on this episode of the Coast Gridiron, a football podcast. And what's up, guys, and welcome back to Coast Gridiron. I'd like to introduce a very special guest of mine. Spent time with the BC Lions, I believe 8 seasons with the BC Lions. Spent some time with SFU, obviously the Klansman back then. Now the color analyst for the radio for the BC Lions, Giulio Caravatta. Giulio, how you doing today?
Cool, buddy. How are you?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. Nice quiet Saturday this morning, and excited to talk some football.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, it was I was just thinking to myself, like, it's March already. Like, the season's going to be here before we know it. So it's nice to start when you start talking about football this time of the year, it's getting kind of close.
Well, especially with a little bit of excitement that free agency brought, and then you kind of have been in my head, with the new additions, maybe not some old additions like DA, kind of what he's going to look like in this offense, and then obviously with the big trade of Dean Evans, and just the mind's been racing. So excited to talk some Lions, and excited to introduce my audience to you a little bit. So
Right.
I think before we kind of talk about the Lions of today, I'd love to maybe just talk a little bit about you. I know that's kind of hard to do sometimes, especially a humble guy like yourself. But maybe if we could just get started to maybe. So you're from uh,
Etobicoke,
Ontario, Ontario. So
which is just outside Toronto.
yeah,
Uh,
could
yeah.
you just
So
tell us like how your experience was when you maybe started playing football? Was it community football? Was it for your high school? Just a little bit of that kind of stuff.
okay. Yeah. No. So I started playing football in high school, but I was like back then, it was, I played football in the fall, and then I played basketball, and then I played soccer, and then I ran track, and then I played baseball in the summer. So I was one of those kids that went from season to season, not like you see nowadays with A lot of kids just picking one sport and really kind of focusing on that. So I had a great high school career. We had a very, very good high school team. Really, really lucky to have some really, really good coaches that not only taught you about the game, but they just taught you about how to be, a good sport. To be able to, play the game the right way, and then when it was over, it was over. So I look back on that now and just think about how grateful I am for all those great coaches that I had in my high school career, and they really, really did shape me moving forward. And actually, you'll recognize this name because he was one of the coaches that I had in high school. Was Gino Retta,
Oh, really?
the host of on TSN. Gino, was a volunteer coach in my high school, and turned out to be a very, very influential figure in my life. He was just one of those guys that really kind of taught me a lot about, what it took to be successful and work ethic and all those things. So it was, yeah, it was just a fantastic experience. So then I got a number of scholarship offers, and then I chose to go to Simon Fraser, obviously because at the time, they were probably the best football school in the country, and they also were very good academically. And I kind of wanted to, I got good advice in high school. Like my coaches used to say, when you're deciding, you remember one thing, and not to kill your dream, but if you want to play professional football, the chances are very, very slim. So if you can trade in what you have in athletically for a degree, you're going to be way ahead of the game. And that's kind of the mentality that I had. I really just, played my college football and just went about my business and tried to work as hard as I could. And luckily for me afterwards, I didn't get drafted, but I did sign as a free agent with the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. And I lasted about 4 or 5 days there. Got cut very quickly. That was devastating. And I was lucky when I came back to Simon Fraser. I got an offer. I was a grad assistant, so I was able to stay around the team. And then Bill Quinner, who was the player personnel director in Winnipeg, had moved from Winnipeg to BC in 1991 with Bob Obilovich taking over the team. And he really liked me in Winnipeg and said they just didn't have the room to keep me. So he signed me, and then I was lucky and fortunate enough to play 8 years. And that's kind of the football journey part. It's been a very interesting ride, but one I wouldn't trade for anything.
That's awesome, Julia. So something that kind of jumps off the page to me right away, and something that's kind of a nice transition point here is you touched on it right away, is that you had the experience of having good coaches that were giving you some good advice as well as coaching. In Canada, that's not always the case. You live it and breathe it now. I believe you coach
Yeah,
in BC.
yeah.
I do as well. I played high school football in BC. Can you maybe just touch on, obviously you didn't have this experience, but just talk about how the coaching in Canada from the grassroots level has gotten better from the time
Yeah,
that you were playing to now, and now you're seeing guys kind of like Chase Claypool go to the NFL, Javon Holland, and then now Nathan Rourke and Trey Ford and some of these guys that are
yeah.
Canadians and be high level prospects. Can you maybe just touch on how you have seen the coaching change in Canada?
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, like my high school experience, my coaches, looking back on it, it wasn't as much the X's and O's that they were teaching. It was more about work ethic and how to be a good teammate and what it was to be on a team and sacrifice and all those kinds of things. So, but you're absolutely right. I've said this for many, many years. Having been involved with, and obviously playing football here, you get to know a lot of the high school and collegiate coaches. And it's the one thing that I think they don't get enough credit is how that's all evolved, right? They have been instrumental in building the landscape here in the Lower Mainland and British Columbia. Like you mean there's a lot of really good football players that are coming out of this province every single year. And what and to your point about the coaching, it's not only coaching. Like I know what at our level, it's about coaching the all the little things, like what it is to be in the weight room, what it is to watch film, how to prepare yourself for a game, and how it is that you just can't just show up and say, hey, listen, I'm gonna have some McDonald's in my bag and a Coke and expect to have that as my pregame meal. Like, you're trying to teach them the things that you need to be able to have to be successful. And so you combine that with the X's and O's part, which I think the coaches, they're getting more experience. They're getting, a lot of the coaches now that are coming back and giving back to their communities and back to their teams. These guys have played a high level of football and now are using that and giving back to the kids. So it is just getting better and better. And it's a lot of fun, especially for me being involved in high school now. Like, you see how good the programs are run and how good the coaches are and how much they're committed to their programs is pretty inspiring, right? And it's really, really nice to see, because in the end, it's the kids that benefit. When you have guys that are so committed to their programs, it's really the kids that are benefiting, and it's very gratifying to see how it's all kind of evolved and gotten so much better.
It has, and it's been awesome to see, even like with Sean White getting a lot of the guys out with White Rock this year and stuff like that, and then guys like yourself, a former pro, and just the knowledge that you can pass along, right? With more than kind of totally, and just it's been, and then things kind of like these 7-on-7s, like Game Ready over there, and
Yeah.
Over here we've kind of started a skill development with Cage Athletics for doing kind of skill development for kids that are from Pop Warner on up to college prep kind of things, and just those things being available from even 10 years ago when I was in high school. There was never kind of opportunities like that on the island to play like in the off season setting, learning those other skills like how to get off a jam or release or stuff like that. So it's just
Yeah.
been
No,
cool to see that it evolve, and it just myself being able to live and breathe it along with you, Giulio.
yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. Like, the one of the things that really jumped out to me was, I was really just I really wanted to be able to not only teach the kids about throwing a ball and about, the mechanics of throwing a football. However you teach that, that's one component. But what I found was really trying to teach the kids about the preparation, especially at quarterback, that's required to be successful. And that's about watching film, how to manage a game, how to understand down and distance, how to understand who's in the game. How do you watch film? Who do you watch? Like, what numbers are they? All the little things that, I only wish that I would have had someone explain to me at that age. That's where I really see the next level of development, right? Is that part of it? Is, the coaches are so good now at teaching the kids how to lift weights and nutrition and all those things that are required. But now the next step for us, and I know with our team, is teaching that football sense, is understanding the game and understanding all the nuances that come with it, because there are so many. So that's one of the areas I think we're still looking to improve, and we'll continue to do that. And I think that's something, especially for quarterbacks, will only help the level of play as they move forward.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more, Giulio. Coaching at ND last year, coaching at ND, I've coached. I've been out of high school now. I graduated in 2015. I've coached, I guess, 4 seasons. I coached my first 2 years out of high school, and then I started playing junior football again, and then I've coached these last 2 years. And the kind of something you said there is just understanding the game of football and just how nuanced it is and stuff like that, and just understanding that maybe if you have a go route this time and you don't think you're getting the ball, you should still run hard because you're clearing out that zone or space for someone else, right? And
Yeah.
when you're in high school, all you think of is just, I want to get the ball, and kind of you're so stuck in that mindset. And it's kind of funny, just me being a younger coach as well, being able to relate to them, because I was in their position not too long ago. So
Yeah.
it's really cool to see that aspect. But
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's interesting you say that because yesterday we actually had a camp for our kids, and we were out there, and it's one of the things that really jumps out at me because some of the kids were grade eights that are going to be coming to Centennial, and it's amazing how many kids, like when they line up, especially like receiver or running back or whatever, um, that their eyes are either in at the quarterback or they're down on the ground. And
Yeah,
I was trying to explain to them, like, listen, you need to play with your eyes up. Like everything is happening in front
in
of
front
you.
of you.
See, if you understand what's happening in front of you, then you're gonna have that advantage, right? Like you know what the count is, you know what the play is. So you don't need, unless we're playing in front of 50,000 people, you don't need to look in to see the snap. You can hear it. So that just even that basic concept about keeping your eyes up and having the picture in front of you, because I always say the answers are in front of you. You just have to see them. And so that's again another thing that you try to teach at a young age, and it has been very very rewarding for me because some of these kids now I've had for a couple of years, and to see their development and their understanding from year to year has been so gratifying because they get it, right? They're starting to really understand it, and then that's fun for me because when you get to this point in high school, like now you can start to be a little bit more creative
Yes.
and get them to start doing some things that you might think, oh, maybe that's a little bit too much, but they're ready and willing and eager to learn it because they're way past those little basic points. They're really starting to understand, you know, hey, what cover three is, what cover two is, how to recognize cover one, and when you see a blitz, what should you do with your route, and all those kinds of things. So it's been so gratifying for me. It's been a load of fun.
That was an awesome little chat, Julia. I really enjoyed that, especially coaching here and just giving back to my high school. That's a really good conversation that I wanted to have. But just moving back to you and I'm curious, somebody from Ontario, what kind of and you said that you had I believe you said you had a few other offers on the table.
Mhm.
Kind of what led you to end up in SFU all the way across the country? And kind of what were your first impressions of BC and SFU when you got here?
Wow. Um, okay, so you got so I didn't kind of at the beginning. I didn't tell you that I grew up in a very very Italian house. Like my parents were immigrants from Italy. My dad came over when he was 21. My mother was 19. They knew nothing about sports. They knew nothing about any of that stuff. Like it was through high school that I got exposed. Like my dad didn't sign me up for hockey or didn't sign me up like I mean whatever sport I played because it was available to me in school. That's where I got my experience. So um I remember when I and this is a true story. I remember showing up at school one day, and my coach, who was also my gym teacher, Jack McKee was his name, really good guy. He said to me, "Hey, listen, this came to you for the school, came to you from a school." And I was like, "Well, what is it?" He's like, "Well, it was from Acadia University." And it was a football questionnaire saying, "Hey, we're interested in you. Are you interested in coming to university to play?" And blah 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 blah. I fill out this question. I was just like shocked. I was like, because I didn't even think about playing college football. Like I just was playing. I had no aspirations of going on after that. I just didn't think I was good enough. And so when that happened, I was kind of like, holy cow, like I could go to university and play. Like he said, yeah. He goes, you're definitely good enough to go and play. And I was just like, well, I didn't even think about it. So as the year kind of progressed and I played another year, then the letters were coming more. And I started getting invited to some of these college camp, or there was a couple of camps that they had where there was college coaches. And so then I started getting, some interest in going. So, I had a lot of the universities in the east, like, St. Francis Xavier and Mount Allison and Concordia and Acadia and U of T and all those kinds of schools all in Ontario. They were all interested. Um, but when I got the offer from Simon Fraser, I was like, holy cow, it was in Vancouver, which seemed like it was on the other side of the world. And I remember saying to my coach, I was like, "What do you think about this? Like, I mean, they're really interested. They want to talk to my parents." And he's like, "Giulio, I'll." So they started asking around for me, and he came back and said, "Listen, who I've talked to, they said, listen, if you want to play football in Canada at the collegiate level, you got to go to Simon Fraser. They're probably the best program." And I started thinking to myself, "Holy cow! Like going all the way to Vancouver, like." I was just like, one, I never thought my parents would allow me to do it. But then, he came to my house and he sat down with my parents. And like I said, my parents were very old school Italian. They didn't really understand. And so I'll never forget when Doug Preston was his name, he left my house and my dad said to me in his broken English, did I understand this right? Or they want to pay you to go play football? Like give you a scholarship? Like that was to him, it was paying me.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. And he was just like, he couldn't believe it, right? He just didn't. So, anyways, I said to myself at that point, I go, I don't want to be one of these guys that walks around my old hometown and says, oh, I could have done this or I could have done that. I said to myself, if I don't try to go do this, I'm going to regret it for the rest of my life. And the worst thing that can happen is that I go out there and I don't like it. I can come home.
Yeah.
But if I don't leave my parents' basement, I might be here until I'm 30. So I figured, you know what? I got to go try. And for me and my experience, I had never been on a plane to that point. I'd never been west of Toronto. And so it was a huge, huge leap for me. Because the other part of this is that I was the only boy in an Italian family. My mother did everything for me. She did my laundry. She made my dinners, lunches, breakfast, everything. And I was just like, I've got to go try to live on my own, right, and see what it's like. So, anyways, I decided that was what I was going to do. My mother was very upset. She thought, you could play football right here in Toronto. You could live at home. We could take care of you, all this kind of stuff. And I was like, you know what, Ma, yeah, you're right. But I've got to go try this. You know what I mean? So
that's almost like you becoming a man, Giulio. Like
yeah,
a
yeah,
lot of people, like even myself, I can't say that being 18, I would ever be able to kind of have the courage to move across the country by
yeah,
myself, away from
yeah,
my family. That if you have a tough day, you can't really go home to your support.
yeah. Oh, it was,
You're on your own, right? Like,
yeah.
yeah, you
And
have your friends, I'm sure,
yeah,
but
it was
sorry, go ahead.
the other part too, Cole, is that the lucky thing for me was that I remember I think our rookie class at Simon Fraser that year, there was between 25 and 30 of us, all new. And there was probably about, I'd say maybe 15 from out of province. There was a whole bunch of us from Toronto. There was a bunch of guys from Alberta and a couple guys from Regina and on the whole roster, there was guys that were from all over the place, but there was a lot of guys from Toronto.
And you're able to click
So
with.
we connected because we all shared a common, we were all away from home. So we kind of really stuck together. Now, having said that, I remember like within the first couple of weeks of training camp, I think a couple of guys didn't make it. They went back home. And then after the first semester, you get another 4, 5, 6 guys that drop out because the experience isn't for them, right? They don't, it's just not moving away and playing football isn't for them. It wasn't what they thought it was going to be. So they moved on and did something. They went back home, right? They got homesick and I was close. I tell you, when that first semester for me was very difficult, especially towards the end of the semester when football was over, and now all of a sudden you had that gap between the season being over and the end of the school year. And I remember thinking to myself, I was so homesick. And then when I went home for Christmas, I realized when I got home that nothing changed. Everything was the same. Like I wasn't missing out on anything. Like it was, though everything was the same. So it really was, it transformed me because when I was at the end of I was home for about a month. I remember coming at the end of my stay in Toronto, thinking to myself how much I missed Vancouver. So that was kind of an indicator to me of
You did the right thing.
I did the right thing, right? That I wasn't homesick enough that I wanted to leave what I had, right? I developed some really good relationship friends wise that they're still my friends today. And so my college experience was again something I would never trade. It was just such a great experience. And then I was lucky enough, that's where I met my wife. And she was from the island, but she was going to school at Simon Fraser. So that all started to happen. And now I was just saying to my wife earlier today, it's been 37 years that I've been out here.
Really?
Yeah,
So
I moved
you've
up.
been out here longer, obviously, than
Yeah, of 1986 when I came out here, and I used to go. I went back a couple of summers to work, and then there was one summer where I decided to stay out here because everybody was telling me how beautiful the summers were here. So I stayed, and I never went back. So
that's so crazy, Julio. And it's just it's kind of cool to hear, even like playing junior football, and you have people come from the prairies, and most time not as far as Ontario, but guys that end up coming here and have the same experience and never end up leaving. So just very very grateful for where I live, I guess you could say, and just happy for where I'm able to be. I'm able to walk out of my house and be able to see things daily that people aren't able to across the country. So just
exactly,
very grateful for where I live for sure.
awesome.
Now, talking a little bit more about you, Julio. You had a pretty great, I guess you could say great college career. I know you set some records. I believe you're like fifth, have it here, fifth in passing yards in one season, sixth in passing TDs in one season. Um, from the football aspect of your SFU career, maybe can you just touch on maybe some of your best memories, maybe your best game, or maybe just a
Yeah.
story that jumps out to you?
Well, the thing about it too was that I was in a situation too where I was behind a couple of guys early on that were good, like Darren Trainer and Earl Bugelink were both ahead of me on the depth chart, and I got lucky in my sophomore year through a couple of injuries that I got to play a little bit in my sophomore year, and then I really split time as a junior, and then it wasn't until my senior year where I really kind of was able to establish myself as a starter. But I will tell you this is that one thing about playing quarterback, and I learned this obviously in the pros as well, is that it's not easy. You're constantly learning new things. And, I remember at the end of my career in my senior year, probably about one or two games into my senior year where I really felt comfortable. Like when I walked out on the field, I had a certain level of confidence that, hey, I can do whatever I want here. Like I felt, that I had the knowledge and understanding of my offense and the understanding of a defense and how that works. And that was for me, it was I'd reached a point where I was like, wow, this is a lot of fun. But unfortunately, it was the end. And then, taking the step and going to the pros, that was another thing, like where, you know, I'm not gonna paint this any other way. Like I was lucky because my career, I was very versatile. I played quarterback in college. I could punt. I never kicked off and never kicked field goals, but I could do it in an emergency. And so when I got to the pros, that was something that
You
kept
get
me
a
around.
you get a jersey on game day.
Yeah, I was able to keep myself around. And then I found that, you know, because back then a Canadian quarterback wasn't going to get much of an opportunity, but because of my versatility, I was worth keeping. So what it did is it enabled me to learn as a quarterback a little bit more each and every year. And then I started getting more and more comfortable where the coaches started saying, hey, this guy can play. So, that was my advantage, right? That I was able to kind of learn and develop and get better and better. And again, more confidence and more confidence that, you can do this, right? Because that's a big part of playing at that level is having that confidence in your ability that you can go out there and do it. And playing quarterback's not easy. So I was, as I look back now, as I've gotten older, I am very, proud of what I was able to accomplish in the sense I know I didn't play very much and I don't have a lot of career stats, but I'm really more happy about my ability to persevere and keep myself on a roster for 8 years. That's not easy to do. So I'm extremely proud about that. But when it gets back to the college stuff and my games in college, like, I was surrounded. Like I think my 4 years at SFU, we had 3 out of the 4 first round draft picks.
Wow.
So Orville Lee was the first pick overall when I first got there, when he was a senior. Then Sean Millington was the first pick overall, and Nick Mazzoli was another one that he was a receiver, and I think he was the first pick overall. So we had some fantastic players that played up at SFU, and the list of guys like who played other positions that were drafted and had great pro careers: Bruce Dixon, Remy Trudell, Mark Reed. The list is long of guys that went on and had great pro careers that we played together in college. So we had a very, very good team, and we played some really, really good competitive teams in our division, like Linfield College and Pacific Lutheran and University of Puget Sound and Southern Oregon and Western, all those schools. They were good, really good competition, and it was a really, really fun league to play in.
And forgive me, Julio, you guys would have been NAIA, right?
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Julio, obviously now, we had the news a little bit ago that SFU doesn't have a conference to play in. Can you just talk about what do you think their options are, and then maybe just touch on a little bit about what the Shrum Bowl means to SFU, UBC, and the province of BC, and maybe what that can bring back to
yes,
just both programs.
Yeah. Well, the state that they're in now, it's very unfortunate, and I won't lie, I'm a little sad about it because I thought going to that Texas league was going to be a real stretch. And I know that there's a lot of stuff outside of my realm that is going on up there that I know from a political standpoint is hard to wrap my head around. But what I think is that they need to get into a conference where they can be competitive, right? Clearly the conference, you can't continue to lose the way that they were losing, and expect to get recruits, and that's
build a culture.
You got to build a culture, is right. So personally, I'd like to see them be able to maybe drop down a division, because all those schools that I was saying to you, like the Pacific Lutherans, the Linfields, the UPSs, the Lewis and Clarks, the Whitworths, they're all still playing. They're Division III, but they're still playing. But I understand, though, that for SFU to be able to do that, they can't just drop down like one sport. They're an NCAA.
Their whole athletics.
Yeah, they need to have multiple teams drop, and they're not gonna do that, right? So I know that they've had a couple of conversations with other conferences. I think there's one in Colorado that and there was another one that they were hoping to get into. They need to get into a competitive conference where they can fit in and win. And the other thing I think they need to do is they need to get back to the days where recruiting locally was the biggest thing. Like I can remember like I said, when I was getting recruited and asking around about Simon Fraser, like, every big time high school player wanted to go to SFU because of how good the football was and how competitive they were. And if you wanted any shot at making the pros, SFU was getting I can remember looking at the program they sent me. There was 10 guys drafted that in 1985 senior class. Like, it was ridiculous how many guys have been drafted, and they were doing that every single year. So it was one of those things where they had to, they were so competitive. And I just think that they need to get those local kids that it was a big deal for us to come here and compete against the Americans. It was like a badge of honor. So I think you need to create that kind of culture again. And so, I know there's a lot of work that needs to be done, and hopefully they can get that thing turned around. But they're in a tough spot right now. Like I can't see that they're going to play another year in that conference down in Texas, and then they're going to change after that. But yeah, lots of stuff needs to happen up there, and hopefully they can get it turned around. And as far as the Shrum Bowl goes, I went this year. It was such a great atmosphere. It was such a great game. I know that from my experience, having played in those games, what they mean to the community, what they mean to the players, what they mean to the programs. Like, it is a big deal. And I'm really happy that they've decided to continue that. And I hope they continue it every single year. It's just great for the football community. It's something that when I talk to my friends today, like 35 years ago, we played in those games. Those are the games that we talk about. We don't talk about many games. But we do remember the atmosphere. Like, I remember my senior year in 1989, we played the Shrum Bowl at Swangard. There was probably 11,000 people there. It was the thrill of a lifetime to play, a collegiate game there with that kind of a crowd. It was awesome. So I'm glad they brought it back, because I know what it means to the players, and I hope that they have those kinds of memories as I did.
Obviously you get guys go out of province and stuff like that, but you get so many guys that have grown up playing against each other that go to SFU or UBC, and you have that rivalry going up from Pop Warner to high school, and then
Yes.
I gotta play this guy again, and it's bragging rights on the line again for the city and the province, and then both families are there. So I was bummed. It was a little close to Christmas. I had something come up, and I wasn't able to go, but next year I definitely got to make sure I get over for that. And just experience, I've never experienced even just being in BC, I've never experienced a UBC game or an SFU game live. So
Really? Well,
gotta get over.
nice at SFU. You'd enjoy that.
Yeah, I gotta get over and experience that. So I guess moving forward, Giulio, we'll touch a little bit about your Lions career, and then we'll touch on the Lions. So we'll focus on the Lions from here on out.
Sure.
Maybe just take us through your mentality of being kind of an undrafted player, and just the battles that you have to go through. Obviously, you touched on it a little bit there. You found that you had to be versatile, and I believe you did some kicking and punting in the pros.
Yes.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
making yourself versatile, but just tell me about some of those early years, and then
Yeah.
for someone that I believe you didn't see your first steps or first start for a while, so just talk about
Yeah.
your kind of mentality of being an undrafted player, and just living the pro lifestyle, not knowing if you're going to be around or whatnot, whatever you were thinking back then.
That's you mean that's what I was saying about that. One of the things I'm most proud about is that perseverance, right? Because when you're an undrafted player, you have an uphill battle, right? So in my case, right, like there was a few of us that were undrafted my year. Spencer McClenning and Doug Hawking, actually, they played their junior football in one played in the Okanagan, the other one played in Surrey.
Doug was my head coach for the VI Raiders for 2 seasons.
Yeah, so Doug's a great guy, and we played together for a while before he went back to Winnipeg. He was a great football player, but we were part of that. There was a bunch of us that were undrafted and signed as free agents and ended up making the team. So, that those are like when you obviously, in my case, I think it was that I think that they only saw me as a kicker at first. They saw me as a punter. And then when I went to training camp, they started to say, hey, listen, like I can, like, this kid can throw. And it was Joe Powpow that was actually in my corner that was really pushing for me, because he liked me. He thought that I could play. And so anyways, having somebody in your corner helps when you're an undrafted player, right? If you have a coach or a positional coach that really likes you, and
it's almost like you have a friend in the fight with you,
Yes. You need friends. So like, yeah, so that was kind of my journey, right? Like I think that I surprised them a little bit in my first year as a quarterback, and I ended up, playing in the inter squad scrimmage as a quarterback, and I did well. And then they put me in an exhibition game and I did well. And then they were like, you know what? You won the job. So I ended up winning the third job there there was about three of us that were battling for it. So, and one of them, one of the guys was Grady Bennett. He played at the University of Montana, set all sorts of records there, and came as a very highly touted American quarterback. And so, beating him out of a job was, that was a big, it was a notch in my belt. I felt, wow, I must have done something right. And so that's kind of how it evolved. And so, as I said, like I started to get a little bit more confidence, and I was the learning curve for me was massive, because I was being taught things that, some of these guys were being taught when they were in high school, and, how to read defenses and all this kinds of stuff was just so foreign to me, but I learned very quickly. And yeah, so it was just one of those things that, when you're undrafted, you seem to always have to walk with a little bit of a chip on your shoulder. And then the other part that was very frustrating was that, when you win the confidence of a coach, and then you lose that coach. So in my 8 years, I had 4 different head coaches.
Wow.
And that's hard, right? Because I remember
Never any traction.
Yeah, I remember gaining the confidence of Bob Obilovich, and then Bob got fired, and then they brought Dave Ritchie in, and they brought Eric Tillman in, and this isn't any disrespect to Eric Tillman, but Tillman came in and he didn't know me from a hole in the wall, right? I was a Canadian quarterback. He went out and brought in like 3 or 4 high-priced and highly regarded American quarterbacks, and so. Basically, I was basically a write-off at that point, and then I just battled and kept myself in it. And the coaches would say, "Jesus, this guy's not bad, right? Like, he's better than the guy that we brought in." So you continue to kind of fight, and then you gain the trust of that coach, and that was Dave Ritchie at that time. And Dave actually gave me my first start. So I really had gained a lot of traction with him, and then he got fired, and then Joe Powell came in as a quarterback, and I know Joe, we had a history, and I was right in the mix there, and then he got fired, and then Adam Rita came in, and then the battle became again, right? So it was not something that I look back on it and I appreciate now because of that perseverance and fight that it taught me. But at the time, I could remember saying to myself, "Holy cow! Like, I can't catch a break with any of these guys," right? So that's kind of the journey that I had going through with the Lions. But again, would I have loved to have played more? Absolutely. Like, I look at where I was as a Canadian quarterback, and back then there was 2 of us. For Bob Torrance was in Calgary, and it was myself, and then Larry Justanis came in midway through the 90s for a couple of years. But it was really just the 2 of us, Bob Torrance and myself, for quite a few years there. And where they are now with a Canadian quarterback is fantastic because now there's an appetite for them, right? People want to see those kids play, and obviously Nathan proved to everybody that if you give a kid a chance, that you might be really surprised on what you get.
He can do it,
and he can do it, and he proved it.
Absolutely, Giulio. I think this will probably be an easy one and probably a little bit of a layup for you, but maybe I'll just tell the fans a little bit, maybe just for some of your options. What was your best memory as a pro? I'm sure you're going to say 94, but like you said, your first career start, August 27th, 1994, first touchdown, August 27th, 1994, first start, October 21st, 1995. What was maybe just your best memory of those years, Giulio? I'm sure you're going to say 94 and just
94. That's the obvious one, right? But
yeah,
story about that touchdown. We were playing Shreveport, I believe.
Yes.
And I got the word. Gary Hoffman was our offensive coordinator, and I got the word from him. He said, "Giulio, you're going into the." We were up by, I think, 30 points. It was midway through the fourth quarter, and he says, "You're going in." Great. So I remember that I was warming up, and the defense was out there, and Charles Gordon. It was either Charles Gordon or Enos Jackson got an interception, and they were running down the sideline, and they got knocked out at their 2-yard line. So I'm coming out. I've got the ball on the 2. So I'm running onto the field, and Gary Hoffman yells at me. And he says, "Hey, come over here. You need a play." And I said, "Gary, I know what the play is. I'm going zero wedge, which was quarterback sneak. I'm going to go 3 times." I said, "I'm getting my first touchdown because I may never get down here again in my lifetime." And he just started laughing. He said, "Go ahead." So I went back sneak on the very first play, and that's how I got my first touchdown.
That is awesome, Julio. That is a all timer. That one. That is a just the self. I love that. Just the self confidence and just I love that little tidbit.
That was a good. That was one of my highlights. My first start was another one that obviously meant a lot to me, because it took me, took me 4 years to get to that point where they felt confident enough to put me into a game. But as far as like those kinds of the relationships, those kinds of things, like those are the things that I remember. Like
The
as far
plane
as like,
rides and
yeah, like,
practices.
I mean, like I'm still very good friends with Jamie Terrace and with Louis Pasaglia. Like I see my teammates like Doug Hawking. I may not see Doug for a few years, but I run into him at a football event or something, and it's like time's never gone by, right? We share common goals, we share common experiences and things that happened that mean that bring a smile to your face. And I'm sure that anytime you talk to an ex athlete, those are the things that they're going to remember, is those experiences, the relationships. It's not as much about the football anymore. It's more about the people that you've met, and that those relationships that you absolutely cherish and wouldn't give up for anything.
Yeah, it's awesome to hear, Julio. And something obviously being a part of pro football, it's very uncommon. I believe it's like 1-2% of people that ever play football, and just something you should definitely be proud of. You stuck
Yeah,
around for 8 years. Obviously, people say the NFL is the not for long league. The CFL is the same way, where people come and go and
yeah,
aren't able to establish themselves for a long career. So something you should be very proud of,
yeah,
Julio. And something you were able to kind of turn into your next opportunity is, after you retired, you've kind of stepped into this role. I believe from what I read, I think you hosted some pre and post games
yeah,
your first year out of football, and then
yeah,
you took it into this role of the color analyst, and you haven't
yeah,
let it go since. So maybe just take
yeah.
us behind the scenes of kind of just some of your best memories of being up in the
Well,
broadcast studio.
here I'm sorry, but I'm telling you, you're bringing up, like, you're triggering certain memories. But like, this something that I never ever thought to myself that I was going to do. Like when I played football, there was never an ounce of me that said, "Hey, I think I'd like to get into media afterward." Not There wasn't one iota of that. So towards the end of my career, I knew the end was coming. So I decided, hey, I've got to start thinking about a job after football. So one of my roommates, Remy Trudel, was a firefighter, and he said to me, "Listen, after you're finished playing, you should think about this. I think you'd really like it." So I went for a ride along in Delta, and I fell in love with it, and I started taking all the courses. So in 1998, into my 8th season, I went to training camp, was on the roster for the first, I think, 4, 5, 6 weeks, and then I got released. And so I went and got into the fire academy, and I had a couple other teams that reached out. They wanted me to come maybe and join the practice roster, and I was like, you know what, I don't think so. And then in 1999, I got into the fire academy and graduated in April. And Dave Ritchie was the head coach in Winnipeg. And he called me and wanted me to come to Winnipeg. And I thought to myself, you know what? I'm just be hanging on for another year or two. You know, I'm 32 or 33. I need to get on with my life. I need to.
You were
So I
okay
got
with
hired.
it.
Yeah, I got hired in West Vancouver as a firefighter. So when I got hired, I got hired at the beginning of June, and they said to me, "Listen, give your employer 2-week notice. Your start date is June 21st." Well, I wasn't working at the time, and my luck have it that the Lions actually were in training camp, and their training camp was out in Chilliwack. So I decided, because I had all this time off, I said, hey, you know what? I'm going to go out and visit Jamie and Louis and my teammates, because I was only 1 year removed. So there were still guys there that I knew. So I went out to training camp and just on a whim, just went out there that day. And I ran into J. Paul McConnell, who was the longtime voice of the Lions. And so I said hi to him, and we chit-chatted. He asked me what I was doing, and I told him. He's all great, good for you, blah, blah, blah. And so that was it. I went off and kind of was watching drills and watching practice, and I stayed there for a couple hours. I didn't talk to him again until I was walking off the field. I was going to my car to go home. And he said, hey, I'm going out to have lunch. Would you be interested in coming? I said, sure, I'll come for lunch. He's going to pay. So I figured, sure enough. So we went for lunch, and he said, listen, you know, when I was talking to you, and you know, I just thought, you know what, you might be perfect for their pre and post game show. You can analyze the game and blah, 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 blah. And I was like, really? I said, well, you know, I just got hired in the fire department. I said, I can't miss any days. I said, but he said, no. He goes, don't, you don't have to miss any time. You come when you can. And so I got, you know, I was doing these pre and post games where I was, you know, hosting it. And I had no experience, like none. It was absolutely terrible radio. I can't even imagine what it sounded like. Must have been just terrible. But anyways, the one thing about I understood the game from a quarterback's eyes. So I understood offense. I understand the defense because I've been studying defense, and I played special teams. So I knew all three aspects of the game and the kicking standpoint very well. So anyways, it was about halfway through the year, maybe in August, mid-August. I remember coming, I'd worked. I came, the game started at 7:30. I got there, was about 6:30. And JP came running up to me, and he was panicked because Tom Larscheid, who was a longtime color commentator, wasn't feeling well. And so he couldn't make the game. And so he said to me, can you fill in as the color guy today? And I was like, are you crazy? Like, I got here a half hour ago. I can't, I don't like, you know, I don't know he goes, don't worry about it. I'll walk you through it, blah, 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 blah. So I said, I wanted to help him out. And I said, okay, I'll do it. Well, because I was only a year removed, and the offense and everything was the same, and so were the signals. So from where I was in the booth,
From Tony Romo?
I could see what the play was going to be.
Yeah.
But I didn't tell him that. So I remember it was Damon Allen was the quarterback, and I remember looking over and I remember seeing the signal and thinking, oh, I know what's coming here. I said, JP, I said, watch this. I said, they're going to double pump this corner down here, and they're going to throw a long one for a touchdown. And he didn't say anything. He just looked at me. And sure enough, just as I said it, it happened just like that. And so he was, you know, they scored a touchdown. He was all excited and everything. And then during the break, he rips his headphones off, and he looks at me and goes, how the hell did you do that? It was my Tony Romo moment. So I said to him, I couldn't lie. I said to him, I said, listen, I said, some of the signals are the same. I said, I recognized the signals, so I knew what play was coming. He couldn't believe it, right? Anyways, he loved it. He thought it was really good. And I was just like, I can't even imagine how bad it was. But anyways, he really believed in what I was doing, and he really thought that I had a future. And if it wasn't for him, I would not be standing here or sitting here. But it ended up being that Tom was also doing the color for the Canucks. So there was some conflict games
But you
So
couldn't make it.
through the Lions, I was able to do the color. So yeah, that's kind of how it all started. So it wasn't like I had ambitions about getting into radio. It just kind of all fell into place, and I've been very lucky. Like this is going to be, I think this year is going to be my 25th season.
What a cool story, Julio. And I mean, for something that you didn't know that was going to hit you in the face, I mean,
Oh,
you've called what,
oh
two Grey Cups,
no, I've called. I want to say eight.
eight. Oh
I
my
think.
goodness,
Yeah,
that's like for someone, for I guess non-football fans, like the pinnacle of what
yeah,
for in the CFL, like their whole lives are kind of based on hopefully winning a professional championship, and for you able
yeah,
to be able to call some of those games and be
yeah,
such high stakes for the people that are listening and even for the people that are playing, it's
yeah.
something that's probably so pretty cool for you to probably look back on.
Yes, and you know what's funny, Cole? I know I'm dating myself, but I find as I'm getting older that those are some things that I think I kind of maybe took, like, I mean, they were happening and it was great and I was really grateful, but I find now I'm way more grateful for the experience. Like I think the idea that I was lucky enough to do a whole bunch of Grey Cups, right? Like and be a part of that and be a part of the broadcast and be a part of the all the behind the scenes things and seeing how it all works and seeing the getting to know the Glenn Suitors and the Chris Cuthberts and the all these legends of the game that you've been able to cross paths with and share a beer with and pick their brain about certain things. Like it's just something that that's what matters to me, right? Those are the things that really hit home for me now, is those relationships. And that's what I'm really, really grateful for.
And that's awesome to hear, Julio. And like you said, now you've made it how many years doing this? So
So
um
this is going to be my 33rd season, I think, with the Lions.
and just the opportunities that it's given you, like
Yeah,
to go down to the Super Bowl and meet some other folks that are in the football community and be able to
yeah,
kind of I know you're like not a big social media guy, but kind of spread your brand a little bit and get like people to you have like your own connections down
yeah,
south and whatnot, and all these other going to Grey Cups and meeting fans and meeting like you said, the Chris Cuthberts and people that are in the business as well as you.
yeah,
So
yes.
I would imagine it's giving you just countless stories that you're able to
Oh,
tell and able to share with those people. So something that's very special for you, Julia, I would imagine.
yeah, absolutely.
Um, so now maybe we'll transition. Why I wanted to get you on. Um, for those, I guess maybe I never touched on it. For you, those that aren't aware, I was pretty active on Twitter Spaces during the season last year, and someone that was a pretty big guest and someone that was very important to me and like hosting those spaces was Giulio would come on and we kind of talk about the Lions. So when I wanted to have someone on the podcast to talk about the Lions, there was no one else that I'd rather have than Giulio, because we've had that kind of relationship and experience together. So I guess there's probably no other place. Obviously, the news. We'll start with the quarterbacks. Obviously, the news yesterday.
Mhm.
The Lions acquired Dane Evans. Um, sorry. Let's rewind there, Julio. I gotta get. I haven't talked to you since. And then we had the news also yesterday. Just maybe touch on. We got to touch on obviously because we touched on him so much in the spaces. And we haven't yet.
I knew
What
this.
what what are your impressions of Nate signing with the Jags, him getting his NFL opportunity? There's been some naysayers online that kind of aren't happy with him because he went to a place that he's going to have to back up. And then obviously we get the news yesterday of CJ Beathard signing with the Jags for, I think, 2 seasons. And now people have their hands up in the air of why Nathan did it. And now he's going to be back in the CFL, which is absolutely bonkers to me and crazy that CJ Beathard is scaring some people away from Nathan Rourke. All due respect, like you said, playing pro football is no easy task. So anybody that is in pro football playing quarterback, I respect them. They played at a high level, but I guess I think Nathan plays it at a higher level. So
Yeah,
just maybe just touch on it quickly. Obviously, I know he's
yeah.
not with the Lions anymore. What's your thoughts on Nate's
Well,
situation?
well, first of all, I'm absolutely thrilled for him. Um, you know what? You can never ever, you know, bad mouth or you know, I mean, Nathan's journey is going to be Nathan's journey, and this is something that he wanted to do, and I'm thrilled for him that he's getting the opportunity. As far as like everyone that was just dumping on him because he where he chose to go and the situation, I mean that these are people that, you know, they don't know the kind of behind the scenes, and this is again, I hadn't even talked to Nathan. I'm just talking from my experience is that when you try out for what did he try out for 12 or 14 teams?
Dozen teams for sure.
Yeah. So, you know, when you're on that journey, you know, you are talking to teams and their personnel people and their coaches and their GMs, their assistant, whoever they are, whoever's there with your workout. You're getting a sense of what the situation is and how serious they are about you and do they like you, and you're going to get that, feeling from them. And so with Nathan, obviously, you know, he's a very, very smart young man, and he doesn't just jump into things, you know, half-hearted. I mean, he's going to do his research, he's going to ask his questions, he's going to do all the things that he needs to do to make a very, very um, you know, important decision. He's going to weigh in all the factors. So the fact that he chose Jacksonville tells you that that's where he believed that he was going to get an opportunity. And given who's there and their experience, like with Henry Burris and Mark McCoy or Mike McCoy, they have a history in the CFL. Doug Peterson's an ex quarterback, so he probably got a very good feel for them, and it was the best scenario. So good for him. So now Nathan, all Nathan wants is an opportunity. And so, sure, they've signed CJ Beathard. I understand that he's a guy that's been around, but it's about competition. And what Nathan needs is an opportunity. I don't know whether or not he's going to get that opportunity. I know that if he's given one, like a good one, a legitimate one, that he's going to take full advantage of that opportunity. Because he's, like I said, I've been doing this a long time. I've seen a lot of quarterbacks. I haven't seen many do what he does. So he just needs a chance. And I hope, with my fingers crossed and my toes crossed, that he gets that opportunity because he's a fantastic kid. I wish him nothing but the best. From a selfish standpoint, I hope I out here. I really do. But from a person who knows, who's been lucky enough to get to know him a little bit, I wish him a long and illustrious career down there. Because, as I said, he's a fantastic kid, and he deserves everything that he gets.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with you, Julio. And just for me, I don't know really how Lions fans, because obviously there was some comments made about how he said he didn't see him having to come to the CFL or whatever, and fans kind of took that, I think, out of context, which was a little bit BS. For me, I kind of will always be so appreciative of Nathan because he kind of like gave that spark back in me to kind of
Yeah,
um watch the CFL as a whole, but also get back into the Lions and kind of what that means as someone that likes football in this province and kind of just someone that enjoys supporting like the home team. I don't want that to
yeah,
sound cheesy or corny, but just
yeah.
what that means to kind of
Well,
like getting
with that,
people back in the building.
yeah, there's nothing wrong with that, right? Like, you mean, you know, I mean, what I know of you love the game. I know that you love the NFL. I'm sure you love high school football. You love college football. I mean, that's one of the things I don't get. I just don't understand the people that want to pit the one against the other. Like, I love football. I watch
You can love all kinds of football.
it's like if people try to compare the games are not the same. They're apples and oranges. It's different strategies. It's different body types. It's different like, I mean, there's
Different
different
fields,
there's different fields. There's different
different balls.
So like, I just that argument, I get very frustrated with it. I appreciate football, and I watch whatever kind of football's out there. But you're right. Like, I know that's one of the things, and again, you know, having been doing this for a long time, he brought a level of excitement to not only the BC Lions, but to the entire Canadian Football League. There wasn't a bigger, more exciting story than Nathan Rourke. And so with that, you're always going to get the naysayers. You're going to get somebody always going to pick apart something that he said or something that he did, or that's the world we live in now. And it's unfortunate, but that's just the way it is. But I know people deep down are pulling for him, and that's a good thing.
Yeah, I just like you said, Julia, I can't hope for nothing more than just for him to get his opportunity. I think I tweeted something yesterday of just people that were kind of baffled that not to because I feel like this is a little bit of a wrong stigma that is out there, but just for anyone that thought that a Canadian kid that was in the CFL was going to go down to Jacksonville and they weren't going to acquire another veteran to kind of compete for the backup job. I think something that people don't understand is like playing football is like you're one hit away. Like on any given play, for whatever reason, the left tackle doesn't block or your running back doesn't see the blitz and Trevor Lawrence gets smoked and he's done for the year, right? Like Nate's one play away, or for whatever reason, if they think CJ Beathard is good enough to compete with Nathan, maybe he's the one play away guy, right? So I think if people didn't realize that they were going to bring in an insurance policy just in case Nathan, for whatever reason, doesn't work out or they don't like him, I think that is just a little bit of just lazy thinking in my mind for football, anyways. That I think because Nathan's a young guy. He's never played in the NFL. Of course, you're going to bring in someone that's played in the NFL. He has a little bit of experience. I don't know if he's like a veteran per se because he is a younger guy, but someone that's had 2 or 3 years in the NFL. So I think silly narrative, in my opinion, Julia.
Yeah, I mean, here's the bottom line, Cole, is that the NFL, like any professional sports league, it's a competitive business. And when you get into that kind of a business, you're in the business of winning. That's what makes you that's what keeps your job. And so whoever you can get that's gonna make allow you're right. If it's CJ Beathard that is the backup quarterback and he's now thrust into playing, let me tell you something. If CJ Beathard isn't doing well, they're going to move on to the next guy.
Yep.
And if Nathan doesn't do well, they're going to move on to the next guy. That's the nature of the beast. That's just the way that they operate. And so they're not going to, keep a guy in a game that's not performing well. Like, obviously, if you're Trevor Lawrence and you're making $25 million a year, you got way more leeway than anybody else. But I'm saying that if CJ Beathard gets into the game because they need him, Trevor Lawrence gets hurt, and CJ Beathard all of a sudden isn't doing well, they're not going to just sit there and say, well, we're just going to let CJ Beathard play 14 games and live with it. No, it's a competitive business. So that's what Nathan has to, hope for, is that he gets that kind of an opportunity. Because if he does, he's going to succeed.
He is.
He's too good. He reads the game too well. He understands it too well. His ability to process information and get the ball out of his hand is too good. So he just needs somebody to give him a chance.
I'm very excited for someone. I'm sure like yourself that has DAZN subscription and is able to have access to all the preseason games. I will be a big Jaguars fan in the preseason, just watching Nate and enjoying him hopefully winning the number 2 job. And just for whatever, I guess Jacksonville will kind of be almost my number 2 team because whenever the Bills aren't playing, I will definitely be watching hopefully and Nate's getting some mop-up duty. But
Buffalo and they're in the are they in the AFC South?
East,
right?
Buffalo's in the East.
No, Buffalo's in the East, but Jacksonville's in the South, right?
Yes.
So what you can't hope for is a Buffalo Jacksonville conference final.
I know that will tear me apart. But moving on to the Lions, Giulio. What is your first impressions of the Dane Evans trade? Obviously, I think it was a little bit forehand, kind of made it known that this is not. Obviously, this is insurance, but this is kind of VA's team. They've made it clear this is more so for the number 2 job. As well, if you can touch on, I think something that kind of we talked about a little bit, but jumped off to me when forehand tweeted it is Dane made it known that he kind of wanted to play in with Max for
Jordan.
Jordan Maximic, offensive coordinator, and kind of his scheme, and kind of I would imagine he kind of hopes that someone like Jordan is able to kind of revitalize him and maybe give other teams a different opinion on him, because obviously it was a little
Yeah,
bit quieter for whatever reason. So just what's your opinion on the Dane Evans trade?
I know. I won't lie, Cole. I was a little surprised. I
I
didn't
was
see that.
too.
Yeah. So when they signed Dom Davis, I thought, okay, there's your veteran backup that they need, and
Short
um,
yardage gives you everything.
short yardage guy. Yeah. So from what I understand, and I did call around a little bit to find out, like Dane, I think was as you said, was anxious to work with Jordan McSimic. There's a connection somewhere there, and I think that he wants to he wanted a fresh start. He wants to rebuild um, that confidence. Dane's done some very good things in this league, and I think that he just needed a change of scenery. And I will say, like, lucky for the Lions, like he probably could have gone to a couple other places that maybe might have been a
Better
little bit more
opportunity.
him, right? But he decided to come here, and I think that goes to show you that obviously the word's out that this is an organization that people want to come and play, and I think that for the Lions to be able to get a kid of his quality, because everything that I've heard about him is that he is a fantastic kid and a great teammate. And VA and him have worked together a little bit in Hamilton
Right.
when Vernon was there. So there's a chemistry already there and a relationship already there. But I like that room now, with Vernon, and I like the idea too that Jordan's going to have an entire year to build that offense around what VA does well. I think you're going to see some interesting things offensively, and I'm excited to see how that offense kind of evolves, especially during training camp. But to get a guy like Dane, who has started and played, and get him, for what they got him for, is a no brainer, and it makes them much much better. And I think way more. I think when you look at their roster, and now, like, God forbid, like something happens to Vernon where he gets hurt, or things aren't going right, and you want to there's going to be no hesitation in putting a guy like the game, right? So
A proven commodity.
he's a proven commodity, right? And so when you have, and we've seen it in the CFL so often, you need two guys. And so when you have two guys with this kind of experience, I think you can't lose. You really just can't.
I'm excited to see Giulio, as someone that is able to attend training camp. I'm very jealous, and I would love to see some of those practices of just them with like just the throwing, the one-on-ones, the skellies, and
Yeah,
those things, and just for someone that's a football fan, of just like those things, of just more than what you watch on Sunday. Very jealous of your
yeah.
opportunity, Giulio.
You
But
should do it if you're gonna do a training camp. I would highly recommend it. If you even if you can, you take the ferry over and you drive up there, because the Lions access, like, to seeing and how close you can get to the action, and see it from a ground level, is something that I would, especially for someone like you who's got a history and understands the game, that it is something well worth doing, because you're right. It's all the watching the Brian Burnhams and the Vernon Adams and the Nathan Rourkes sit there for 15 minutes after practice working on comebacks
and like
and
in their
working.
even their indie periods and stuff like that,
Yeah,
perfecting their crafts and stuff like that.
yeah.
So
All the
um
little
it, it's definitely something that's on the bucket list, Julio.
good.
When is so I'm not sure if you're familiar with Mabel. It's a touch football tournament up in Kelowna. I believe it's May long weekend. Are you guys up? I know you guys aren't in Kelowna, you're in Kamloops, but are you guys in
Yeah,
training? Yeah?
yeah,
Oh
yeah,
geez. Yeah, I might have to maybe
yeah.
make a trip up there.
Yeah, because they'll
So,
start. Yeah, uh, they'll start. I think probably like May 10th or May 12th, and around there. I'm not 100% sure on what those dates are, but They start usually about the second week of May, and then they go right through for 2 weeks up there. So I think
Oh,
that May long week is probably going to be in luck. They probably will be up there.
I'll have to poke around on social media. I'm sure it's on the Lions website and whatnot. So who knows, Julia? Maybe I'll see you up at training camp, and maybe I'm able to make something work. But moving forward, something you kind of touched on there, just specifically about the quarterback room. How do you think VA will benefit from a full off season? Obviously, he had I think 4 starts last year. Won some games, lost some games. As well, could you maybe just touch on something like that? I think fans are kind of like losing of like that he had to come into a team that he had no
Yeah,
concept of a playbook and just learning that on the fly. I'm a fan of podcasts, so I'm not sure if you've heard Cam Newton on the I Am Athlete podcast. He touched on when he came back to Carolina and had to play. I believe he was signed on Wednesday, played Sunday. How he thought that kind of hurt his reputation because it kind of he didn't have the greatest game, and he wasn't obviously probably fully prepared of the playbook,
yeah,
knowing the defense, knowing
yeah,
his personnel and stuff like that. So just can you touch on kind of how VA can benefit from a full offseason of Maximic scheming up
yeah,
a playbook around VA's kind of talents?
yeah. That I totally agree with that. I think there's a whole bunch of things that are, I think, at play here. One of the things that I don't think people realize, because we look at athletes sometimes and we kind of look them at as a little bit different, but you got to understand that Vernon Adams is just like you and I, right?
Yeah,
He's a gift. He's a very gifted athlete, gifted quarterback. He's got a family. He's got kids, and so when you get traded midway through a year, and you've got to come all the way across the country, and you think about any one of us, put yourself in his position. I can. I've got young kids. I could only imagine getting traded halfway through the year, having to move, you know, take care of all the business that you got to take care of on that end to get out here, and then to get out here as quick as he did, and how much unresolved business that he maybe had there that he had to take care of, and was running around doing all that kind of stuff, and then trying to find a place to live, trying to establish new relationships, trying to understand a new playbook. Also, the pressure of filling in for a guy who
Nathan.
really torched the league in
Yeah,
the half of the year, and thinking that I've got to keep this thing going, right? So you combine all those things. What he was able to do as a starter, he went 4-2 as a starter. Like that's fantastic.
did his job.
He did his job, and so now
Got his
I
home field advantage.
yeah, and I think now what happens is he now has the ability, and more importantly, Jordan McSimic has the ability now to really go back and study his game, go watch his film, go back and really break down what he does well, and incorporate that into what you're doing. So having this offseason, knowing what's in front of him, and then nowadays, as we are right now, they're probably meeting 2 or 3 times a week via Zoom and going over, you know, what some of the concepts are. So the idea that, and again, I use it and try to use it in simple terms, that for regular people, they understand, not regular people, but you know what I mean? Like people who aren't in like an athlete, like if you're doing whatever job that you're doing and you're fully prepared, for whatever scenario comes up, there's a certain level of confidence that comes with that. Because you know that anything that's kind of thrown at you, you're going to be able to handle it because you're prepared. Vernon's the same way. He now is going to have an off season to really prepare and wrap his head around the offense, and I think that that's only going to be beneficial for the Lions. Listen, what VA was able to do in 2019, the numbers that he put up, like he can be a real game changer. And I think that when he's closer to home now, I think that's a big part of it. I think he spends his off seasons in Tacoma, if I'm not mistaken.
Which is, for those that don't know, is yeah,
Couple
rock
hours,
throw away.
yeah. So now, that comfort level, and so I just think that he's going to be such a different guy coming in this year, and then knowing that he's the number one guy, knowing and having the confidence of the team and understanding the players and having those relationships already started and only building on those, I think that the sky's the limit. So I'm super excited to see what he's going to do. And I'm super excited to see what Jordan McSimic comes up with. He's a real smart kid, real innovative, and a guy that is a really great asset for the Lions because I thought his ability to call plays is pretty special.
Yeah, and I'm excited to see what he does, even more like how he evolves too, how he gets better from his experiences. So, um, maybe just I think this is maybe more so kind of like a fan question or maybe like a narrative. I think something that kind of people will forget is that something that we kind of just touched on is that both these guys are both pros on and off the field. Some people on Twitter were kind of saying like, "Oh, Dane Evans will be in by week 4. Dane Evans will be in by week 5." That kind of situation. I think obviously, like you said, it's pro football. If guys aren't playing well, they will look to replace you and put in the next best guy that hopefully can win. Um, so just kind of how much of a leash do you think VA might have if he does go up and down, if he is a little bit maybe inconsistent? And do you think that maybe I think maybe this will be kind of the fan narrative. Do you think that'll put too much pressure on him? But I mean, I
Yeah,
think something that fans don't understand is like that professional athletes have pressure on them all the time, and they learn to
yeah.
kind of deal with that. So maybe just
That,
touch on. Do you think he will have a long leash, a short leash? How do you think the Lions will approach this?
I think that's you make an excellent point. Because Vernon's played high level football for a long time. You know, what I mean, he's not a guy that's not accustomed to it. He did it in college.
Kevin
Um,
Harris last
it,
year.
it's right, and he did it, and he's done it in the pros. So I don't see that. Again, if Vernon goes out and completely lays like 3 or 4 eggs in a row, then I could see that question probably coming up. But I don't anticipate that, and I think that one of the things that I've learned over the years, and I watch and I listen to guys like Dave Dickinson and how how he handled that quarterback scenario in Calgary, is that that's usually not. You want to be able to handle that the right way. And because and he knows because he was here with Casey Printers and the controversy around that and what it can do to a team, how delicate a situation that is. So I think that Rick Campbell's again a guy who's been around the league, and I think he is one of the great coaches in this league's history. He's had such great success. He really has been. He's grown up in the game. That you obviously you'll attack those scenarios when they come up, but I just can't see them going into this season saying you got a short leash. This is Vernon Adams's team, and again, it's professional football, and you need to perform. But nothing tells me that he's not going to be able to perform with the people that he has around him. He has a lot of talent, and so I fully expect that they're going to be a very formidable offense, and it's going to be it's just going to be his turn to run, and that's all up to him, right? But the reality is that if he does falter and things aren't going well, that's why they got Dane Evans. So, but that is going to be a conversation down the road that hopefully we don't have to have because they're going to be having success.
I'm hoping for VA to just play well and we're in the Grey Cup. So that's all I'm talking about. And Dane Evans will have to back up, unfortunately. But maybe we'll move on to the running back position. I think this is kind of for someone that's at training camp, I would love to also watch this battle.
Yeah.
Because obviously we lose James Butler in free agency, goes to Hamilton.
Mm-hmm.
I guess maybe I'll just start there, Julia, before we talk about the other four. How big of a loss do you think JB will be to the Lions this year?
Well, I mean, anytime you lose a running back, especially James that had such a great year, the one thing that we learned about James was that not only was he a great runner, but he was also a great out of the backfield, and
Blitz
he
pro and stuff, pass pro.
yeah. So that hurts you, right? But in my years of experience in this league, I've learned a couple of things that, each and every year, we always seem to call out a new running back's name. They just seem to be able to find new guys that are able to excel at this level. And so I'm very confident that they're going to be able to find that next guy. And that's just the reality of the business, right? That you're going to lose guys to free agency, and they would have loved to have him back, but that's the nature of the beast. But I don't think that they're going to be sitting here, in 5-6 weeks into the season thinking, oh my God, we don't have a running back. I think that they've got some guys there, some candidates that are going to be, that it's going to be a very competitive room. I think there's 3 guys. I want to say the kid that they just signed to, the Williams kid that played in the NFL for a few years. Is that right?
Yeah, he's former Buffalo Bill. I'm actually, short little plug here, Giulio. I'm actually having him on the podcast on Wednesday.
Right on. Yeah, no, I know that they're very high on him. They really like him.
I love to hear that, Giulio. So, kind of like I just said, obviously I'm a huge Buffalo Bills fan. Big fan of like watching the kind of how I know about Antonio Williams. Big fan of watching preseason games. The kind of cliff notes that are out there for like training camp practices and stuff like that. So, someone that was a fan favorite in Buffalo. Obviously Bills Mafia is a little bit crazy sometimes, and they can kind of attach onto some not like outlandish things, but just like if we lose a practice squad receiver, they'll freak out. So someone we watch Antonio Williams, and I can't lie, I was someone that was maybe an armchair quarterback, and I was kind of someone that would love to see Antonio Williams get more of an opportunity in the Bills backfield. So when I saw him sign with the Lions, I was kind of caught off guard because he's a younger player, and he would only had 2 opportunities in the NFL, but I guess I forget of how much of a business it is and how much of you have to kind of capitalize on your opportunity before it's
Yeah.
gone. So
But
when he signed, I was super excited to see him hopefully impress. So I kind of know a little bit about Antonio Williams. Do you know anything a little bit about the other 3? I believe it's Gregory Howell Jr. I believe he's another guy that had some NFL
yeah,
experience. Tavion Feaster, and then Nate Chavez. I believe that's the names that are on the roster as of
yeah,
now. So just do you have any
yeah.
insight on the other 3?
Feaster was the kid that he was in Montreal, was he not?
Montreal.
Yeah. So I know that he's got a little bit of CFL experience, and I know one of those other kids. Is he from South Dakota or North Dakota?
I believe so. I believe the Nate guy is. I don't have it here in my notes, but I
Yeah.
believe from what I remember the research,
Yeah.
I believe.
So, but I know I talked to Ryan Rigmaiden about that position. Ryan's the head of U.S. scouting and the assistant general manager as well. He's excited about those guys, all of them. Williams, I think is the guy that, as it is right now, I think you would probably say he might be the front runner. But they're excited about that room and that competition. Like they think that they've got all those guys have the capability. So, it's one of those positions every year, Cole, that you go into training camp and there's always somebody that kind of emerges and you're like, wow, like
Who is he kind of?
yeah, because the other part of it you got to remember is that, with the Canadian Football League and motion and all those kinds of things, like for some guys they can wrap their head around it, right? For others, it takes them a while, and if it takes you a while, that means someone else might be stepping out in front of you. So it'll be interesting to see which one of those guys kind of catches on. Yeah, catches on to the system and the game the quickest. And because again, James will tell you, like from year 1 to year 2, like his year 1, his head was spinning. Like the game was so different for him. But you saw what happened with his year 2 is that he was just so much more confident that he was able to excel. And that's what you're hoping, is that you get a guy who understands it, catches on very quickly, and then can allow all that natural ability to take over. Because if you're getting to this point as a running back, like you're coming to a professional team like this, you can play.
You're good.
You're good. You're a good player. Now it's about getting and
Almost
using
like up year 2.
It's all in between your ears. Exactly right.
Yeah,
Exactly right.
so something that I'm curious and something that I like the first thing that came to me, Julio, and something that I'm loving that you're hearing, and obviously I'm not saying that you're breaking any news or anything, but saying that hopefully Antonio Williams has a little bit more of the like opportunity given from the coaching staff. Can you maybe just touch on something that I found for like running backs, right? Like obviously there's four of them, and maybe for whatever reason one of them isn't going to get a lot of opportunities with the ones, and they're up there with like the twos and threes, and they're not able to kind of showcase
Mhm.
maybe their best ability and talent. Just how hard is it for any position to kind of impress with such a limited role and such limited opportunities? Obviously, in the CFL, there's only two preseason games, and just the only like there's not really much mini camps and OTAs up here, so you're kind of given 2 weeks at training camp, your two
Yeah.
preseason games, and that's kind of your resume. Just talk about kind of how do you impress as maybe just for this position as a running back with
Yeah.
such limited opportunity.
Well, here's the thing. You make an excellent point. It is a brutal process coming to the CFL and trying out for a lot of these kids. Like it's a brutal process because I always found too, and I've learned over the years, like those first few days, they're so critical because those first impressions, once they're established, it's hard to overcome that. So if you make a very good impression early, then people are like, ooh, wow, okay. But if you get off to a slow start, it's an uphill battle. So you talked about 2 games. It's not really 2 games. Last year, the Lions did something that really was almost unheard of.
The
If you
rookie
remember,
game, kind of, right?
they only brought 2 veterans. They brought an
Calgary.
entire roster of rookies, like of new players. And usually, the way it is that they bring a certain amount of starters. They start, play very little, and then like 3/4 of the games, probably 2, 3, 4, fourth quarter are all young guys. If you don't impress in that game, the next game is
Ooh,
for the start.
the vets. Yeah,
The
I
3/4 of that game, right? So if you're a young guy, I mean, you've got one really, really only one opportunity, and if you make that impression in the first preseason game, then you might get an opportunity in the late in the second game.
in the
However,
fourth quarter.
however, at the running back position this year is going to be different because you're talking about there's no incumbent coming back, right? They have 4 guys coming that are all new players, right? So you've got David Mackey coming back, and that I mean he plays fullback, but as far as an American tailback, they've got some new guys coming that they're all vying for that spot. So it'll be interesting, and it's going to be a case of one of those guys is going to have to jump out to a quick start. Whoever that is, I don't know, but it's critical. Like I always say to some of these guys to YouTube games and see what the game's all about, so that when you get up here, that it doesn't overwhelm you. That the motion and all the movement and how everybody moves around, sometimes it overwhelms guys, but other guys seem to be able to adapt quickly, and they used to be the ones that survive.
Yeah, to them it could probably be, or to them it's probably like very chaotic. You got
Oh,
guys this way and that way, and you're motioning out of the backfield and all that stuff. So, very good point, Giulio. So maybe moving on to the receivers. I think just a very, I think you look at the names here, like very talented group, like almost like I think I got like a 9 or 10 names here. I mean, we got Javon Couture, Keon Hatcher, Alex Hollins, our new addition, Justin McInnis, Josh Pearson, Daniel Peterman, Rhymes, Scarfone, Lucky, Terry Williams, guys that kind of all
yeah,
played some snaps last year, gave us some key. I
that's
mean, some of these guys caught
right.
touchdowns, like Pearson, Scarfone. Some of these guys caught some big time touchdowns for us.
Yeah,
So, maybe just how good can this group be? And then I think, I would imagine there's probably about obviously Katoy started last year. I would think locked down. I would say three probably cemented starters with Lucky, Hatch, and Rhymes. Do you think kind of there's about two spots open, or is it just maybe just that one spot for
Yeah.
Burnham? How do you think kind of this group is going to shake down for the very talented group that the Lions are going to bring to camp this year?
Well, I see the natural progression is going to be Hatcher is going to move into Burnham's spot. That's going to be a natural progression, and Hatcher is going to be very good there. He reminds me a lot of Burnham. Keon Hatcher has fantastic hands. He runs great routes. I think that he'll fit in there very nicely, and I think showed that when Brian was hurt, that he was more than capable of filling that hole. D Rhymes is D Rhymes. You mean that he had a fantastic year. The one position I think, not that I don't think that it's going to be Lucky Whitehead, but getting Lucky back 100%. You know, I mean,
100%.
with his ankle, and that really kind of slowed him down. But when you lose a guy like that, your hope is that you're going to have guys step in. Alexander Hollins did a great job when he given the opportunity. So I think he's proven to them that he can play. You talked about Josh Pearson, another guy. You look at Scarfone.
Terry
You look
Williams.
and now Terry Williams, and then you look at McInnes, the kid that they just signed. Another. So your depth is very good all the way across. So that is to me that is a position of strength.
And something I found interesting is the depth at Canadian as well. I believe we have four Canadians with Catoy, McInnes, Peterman, and Scarfone. So you're able to have that flexibility with the ratio as well.
Yeah, and Catoy, I mean, Javon is, he's a beast. I mean, he's progressively gotten better and better every single year, and I would suspect that he's going to be. I mean, he gives a rare. He's a big body that can get inside and block, and then his ability to release out of the backfield.
Be athletic.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, Javon from experience is a freak.
Yes.
So kind of who's obviously kind of some of the names that I touched on we're I guess somewhat familiar with, but kind of who are you kind of expecting to kind of emerge a couple months out from training camp and kind of take this opportunity and run from it? Who's the kind of name that maybe Lions fans should expect or kind of just look out for?
I really like what Alexander Hollins did last year, the receiver. I thought he was excellent. And I'm excited to see what he does, because I think the experience that he got at the end of the year, I think, is going to go a long way. I think all for Lions fans, really, all those receivers are guys that they know. Really, all those guys are all known commodities. You talked about the Canadian depth, right? McInnes is a kid that was in Saskatchewan, and I think most people are familiar with him. So I look at that group and think that's just a position of strength. Like, they have a lot of guys that have the potential, to be outstanding, have outstanding seasons. So for any team that has to defend those guys, there's a lot to defend there.
Yeah, I agree. I'm for someone that's a fan of the Lions, but as someone that's played offense my entire football career, I'm very excited to see that group work. Just with VA, if it's Dane Evans, whoever, I think you're kind of set up with that group to kind of just not whoever's in there, but I would think if you're able to be consistent enough, you're going to be able to have success with that group of weapons that the Lions have. So moving on, let's talk about the offensive line quick. Pretty much for the most part, obviously we lose Fig, but Big Phil's back. Obviously Sook's back. Kent's back. Obviously the hole will be at left tackle with Fig leaving.
Who's that? Who did you say?
With Fig leaving?
Yeah, Braxton. Is that who you said?
Yeah, I said. I would imagine he probably has the the lead right now to start at left tackle.
Yeah.
But just who are maybe some other names that we should be aware of? Obviously, we got I think he plays tackle from the Alouettes, Chris Schleger, I believe his name is.
Yes.
Who are some other guys that maybe will be in on that competition for the left tackle spot?
Well, I think it's gonna be Braxton. I know that they like him. I think Phil Norman is another guy too that can play out there.
Okay.
But if I were to, I mean, as far as like Perkins and Braxton, I think are going to be your left and right. You got Suk playing right guard. Getting Michael Couture was
Huge.
huge. He's a proven winner. They tried to get him they tried to get him last year. They didn't get him. So it's funny. I talked to him yesterday. He came out to our centennial practice and talked to the kids. I know that he's super excited about being back. And he's a guy that is going to provide great leadership, and he's a great player. I think Peter Godber had come a long way last year, but I still think that they felt that they needed to get better there, and I think they've gotten better at the center spot. The interesting one for me is going to be left guard. They re-signed David Neville, who really hasn't, established himself. He's been hurt, those kinds of things. And I know Andrew Pearson's coming back, but the one guy that I'm interested to see is Noah Zur, the kid that they drafted.
I was going to ask you about.
Yeah, I know that they really liked where he was going last year, and it always excites me a little bit going into training camp. And some of the kids that were first year players coming back, and what the difference from 1 to 2 is.
The game slows down.
It does. So like a Nathan Cherry, for example, at defensive tackle, like he really, got a lot of valuable time in last year.
He made some big plays too.
He did. And he's going to, how much more confident you think he's going to be coming to training camp, right? And I think Noah's another one that I think that I'm excited to see. I think they would like to see him really push at that left guard spot. So those are the kinds of to me, that's where I think the curiosity is going to be with that offensive line. I think they've got enough veteran guys that, if they play up to what they have been playing, they're going to be fine up there. But it's that left guard spot that I'll be interested to see, which way they go.
Yeah, so I'm glad you touched on that, Giulio. 'Cause I was going to ask you about some of the younger guys, Tyler Packer as well.
Yeah.
I'm glad you kind of answered it there, but how do you think the offensive line kind of I guess like scheme and philosophy will change from VA being behind center to Nathan? I think one thing that if you're kind of not aware from like a few like nuances things is Nathan was able to get the ball out of his hands very quick.
Yeah.
I think VA on the other hand kind of tends to hold the ball a little bit longer, and I think in his 6 games we kind of saw the Lions O-line kind of take a hit from that. Just not blaming it on one or the other, but just the ball not being out as quick as they were used to the previous 11 weeks. How do you think that'll kind of change and be implemented kind of at camp?
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think that given a whole off season to kind of develop that, I think the coaches are going to realize and understand that, that's the difference. So you got to build yourself around that kind of an offense. But the other part is that you now have a quarterback that is much more, I think, not that Nath was a pylon. He could move around and run. Obviously, he proved that with his rushing yards. But I think Vernon's, that's more of the way that he likes to play, is that
maybe much more willing to run.
And that's something that you have to use to your advantage. And it's the other thing that for a lot of defense, not a lot, for every defense, it is very difficult to defend against a mobile guy like that, because defenses are structured when they draw up a defense against whatever formation. Everyone has their responsibilities and all that kind of stuff. But when the quarterback escapes and now, has now gotten outside or, get taxed, it breaks down what you do defensively. There are gaps, natural gaps. You don't allow a running quarterback to just kind of run around. You got to now get somebody out of your defense and bring him to the quarterback so that you're going to force him into making a decision whether he's going to run or he's going to pass. So by doing that, you vacate holes. And if you get those offenses to take advantage of that space, there's a lot of big plays to be made. So, I would think that Kelly Bates has done such a great job with that offensive line that they're gonna understand what the strengths are of Vernon, and they're gonna be able to take advantage of that. If you're defending against the mobile quarterback, that means your upfield rushers usually are going to stay outside because they want to contain him in the pocket, which usually should open up things up the gut. So it'll be interesting to see how that offense changes a little bit and how it changes the tactics of the offensive line.
Yeah, I'm interested to see how the big boys do because I think there is a little bit of continuity. Obviously, I think there probably should be about 3, 4 starters. Obviously, Broxton didn't start last year, but he had some didn't he wasn't a full-time starter, but he did start a few games for us. So
Yeah,
has the continuity playing with those other four. Sorry, yeah, other four.
yeah.
And obviously just Michael being the pro that he is, I would imagine he's going to be able to come in and kind
Oh,
of seamlessly fit in.
yes.
And just for him to be able to come home, I feel like him being comfortable. I feel like he touched on it. He's always wanted to, or he's always seen himself being a Lion one day. So I think
Yep.
him being able to be comfortable coming back home, I would not worry about him being able to fit in. I think that's going to be pretty seamless. But excited to see how this group comes back because I think they're kind of a key to how dangerous the offense can be for sure. So moving on to the defensive side, Julio. Maybe we'll start with linebacker because there was a little bit of a trade there.
Yeah.
We trade Jordan Williams to Toronto. Obviously, I think that kind of shows the trust and the confidence in fellow Canadians in Ben Haladic and Bo Lacumbo. I'd imagine they're probably going to be two of the starters. I think we'll touch on the other two groups quickly after this, but just how important will this linebacker group be to the defense that I think you have a pretty good secondary, and I think I'm excited to see how this D-line kind of takes shape. So how important is this linebacker group to the defense?
Well, yeah, obviously losing Jordan Williams. I think Jordan Williams, that whole thing was, he I think wanted to get closer to home.
Nothing
Yeah,
about the Lions or
yeah,
anything.
yeah. So but getting a first round pick for that was big, getting them back into the first round because they lost that first round pick to Montreal with Vernon.
Yeah.
Uh, but Ben Haladic was excellent. He was a great example of a guy you put in the game and they couldn't get him out. Same with Manny Rugamba. He was another one. You think about Luchez Purifoy was that Sam linebacker, and as soon as Manny was playing, they couldn't get him out of the lineup.
No.
So I think that linebacking core, and then you got to think about a guy too. Josh Woods comes back, and I think he's going to be better. So
Another year of experience.
yeah, I like the mix that they have there. And you know what? The other thing too is you're always going to find somebody that bring into camp is gonna impress. And I know they keep adding to that list, but there's someone always that jumps out. But given what they have right now, I think they're very happy with Bo and with Ben and Manny at the weak side, Mac and Sam. So I can't see, I can see different varying as far as different packages and bringing certain guys in and certain guys out. But really, if you add that to the front end, right, where you got Josh Banks, you got Sione coming back, Tuyama, you've got Nathan Fair, you've got now the two Canadians in Menard and Betts coming back. They had a fantastic. I mean, they combined, they had what 16, 17 sacks.
Yep.
So you know what you're going to get out of those two guys. Their motors never stop. So I like that front seven. I really do. And again, I'm hopeful that they're going to find somebody because that's the biggest thing about the Canadian Football League and success is that because free agency happens and guys leave and all that kind of stuff, that your ability to find new guys is of utmost importance. So the hope is that somebody new, and I don't have all the names in front of me, but that someone is young guy is going to come in there and impress and just like Sione did Tuyama this year and his ability to make his mark. You hope that there's going to be someone else like him.
Yeah. So maybe just jump into there, Julio. Maybe just how much potential can this D-line how much potential does this D-line have, I guess I should say.
Yeah.
Obviously we lose Guacham, but obviously the return of Betts, Menard, like you said, 17 sacks, I believe, combined. Who's maybe just a name that you think will maybe impress this year for the
Sione.
Lions D line?
Sione. I
Sione,
would
yeah.
say it would be Tuyama, and it would be I'm excited to see what Nathan does in his second year, and not excited because I think he's been around a while, but Woody Barron is a guy that he had injury and really slowed him down, and I'm anxious to see what he does coming back after a full year of rehab and coming to training camp 100% ready to go. So, as I said, I know what you're going to get out of Menard and Betts. I know what you're going to get out of the other guys. I think Sione is one of those guys that I think, having a year under his belt, he's only going to be wiser and a little bit better going into this year. So I think, as I said, that front seven for me, I think I like the way it's shaping up, and I think they're gonna be very successful with those guys.
I think they're going to be able to work really well together of
Yeah.
a couple of athletic linebackers as well as kind of the athletic D line. They're not the biggest front four, but they're able to kind of fill
Well,
run lanes and be really sideline to sideline as a whole. So
you said something earlier that I think is very it's you can't state it enough, is that continuity, right? A lot of those guys that played together, they had that full year last year. Sure, you're going to add some pieces here and there, but for the most part, you're talking about a defense that has been predominantly together, and then you throw in a lot of the guys in the back end that are going to be coming back. That to me is another plus, right? There's not very many holes that haven't been filled by guys that have been here, right? They've got a lot of guys that are coming back that know the defense, know what's expected of them, and that continuity is going to take them a long way.
On both sides of the ball, a lot of guys that played meaningful snaps for the team last year, which is huge, and even some of the extensions that are for 2 years that are going some that are keeping guys here for another 2 seasons will be just I can't wait to see the involvement even then.
Yeah.
So moving on to the last position, DB. I think this group was I think there was kind of a little bit of an error that they got too much credit, but I think if you take away kind of maybe the success that Winnipeg had against maybe our secondary, but Zach Collaros and those kind of weapons had success against everybody's secondary. So I don't really know why people overreacted and kind of said that maybe they got too much praise last year. I think they were a very elite group, I'd say, in the CFL. I think they were top two, I'd say at least top three group in the CFL last year. And you're returning obviously you're returning TJ, which is huge. You're returning Gary, which is huge as well. Guys that have been with the Lions for so long. And then Marcus at his halfback spot. And then you kind of got young guys like Mogier, Rogamba. Kind of what are you expecting for them in another year that they're kind of gonna get another season, another off season altogether, another season altogether, and then just what do you think RP is kind of him being a former guy in the secondary, him being now the defensive coordinator, and how he's going to be able to kind of just another year of implementing game plans for them and how he can attack defenses with the secondary he has.
I think RP is a guy that he's a great example of, again, another guy that is going to have just that another year of experience under his belt, right? He's going to be that much wiser and
still young in the coaching ranks.
Yeah. So that's a big one. And then, as you said, like right across the board with Peters, Lee, Sales, you mean there's three guys right there with a ton of experience. Then you're going to throw in Quincy Moge, the safety that started there and then got hurt. And then, they put in Luchez Purifoy there because Rugamba was playing so well. They had to find a place to put Purifoy. So the only real spot I see, I know is Jalen Edwards Cooper is coming back. So, he's a guy that's played that wide side corner. Tyneil Cooper is another guy that I think impressed during training camp. I think he's coming back.
You bring in Mike Jones?
Mike Jones is another guy. Exactly. I totally forgot about that. But there's another guy you add into the mix there. So, it's they've done a really good job of filling any kind of questionable spots with some experience, right? And again, I think that they went through a couple of years ago where they had so many new faces and everyone was saying, they have so many young guys and this and that. And now they've got a group that's been together, and that when you have that continuity, it goes a long way. And so I expect that this defense is going to be, as it was last year, very solid. They're going to be tough to play against, and that's what you want, right?
And I think for people that kind of maybe aren't familiar with RP, or maybe don't go to the games and aren't able to see kind of RP. RP is maybe just as competitive as the guys that are on the field of wanting to, for him, call the right play or put his guys in the right opportunity, and then just the fact that he probably wants to win just as much as the guys on the field, right? Like being a competitive guy, seeing him when I go to the games and he's out there pregame kind of in his athletic gear, and he's kind of getting a sweat on, if you will, and he's kind of like I said, he's a young coach still. He was just playing 4 or 5 years ago, and someone that spent his I believe his entire career as a Lion. So I would imagine just the pride of wanting to keep the tradition of the Lions being good, of wanting to win for his team that he's kind of known for so long. Excited to see how the defense just builds off last year.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, I know Ryan's a very competitive guy. I know that he demands and asks a lot of, especially his DBs where he played, and they respond. So he's clearly a guy that I think has been able to toe the line, because I think it's difficult for young coaches that just finished playing, that you have a connection with the players because you were not that far removed, but you also have to remember that you're the coach. And I think that he's done a great job of that, of finding that balance, of being able to get excited and get involved, and yet still be a hard ass when he needs to be a hard ass. And it's not easy sometimes, but Ryan's found that really good balance that, as I said, he's able to relate to the players and get the most out of them. And he did that. They were a very good defense last year, and he deserves a ton of credit for the job that he did.
He did. Well, Giulio, I said to you before we kind of started, 30, 40 minutes, maybe I'd have you on here.
How long have we?
I believe it's 2 hours later.
No,
it is.
Are you serious?
I am serious, Giulio. So that's kind of what happens when we're talking football, having some fun.
Hey, your dinner's almost done in that slow cooker. That's how long we took.
It is, honestly. So I can't thank you enough, Giulio. Kind of like I said earlier, for just before I even started my podcast, for someone that was a complete stranger to you, just some random in your Twitter DMs, I really thank you. I really appreciate you for you gave me 2 hours today when I told you about 30, 40 minutes. You gave me countless hours during the season on Twitter. And just for someone that's a football fan, I really get a kick out of kind of the insight you're able to give me and a little bit of a behind the scenes. So like I said, when I started the podcast, and for someone that's kind of up and coming, I knew you'd be one of my first guests. So
right on.
I just really appreciate you. We got to learn about you. We got to break down the Lions. I just really appreciate you giving me some of your time today, and we'll definitely have you on again. I was going to ask you kind of what your expectations for the Lions were, but I think that's kind of maybe something for closer to the season, sure, when camp's kind of going on and you kind of have a better feel of how the puzzle pieces are fitting together. So like I said, Julie, I just can't thank you enough for joining me.
Well, it's my pleasure, buddy. I as I said, I've been doing this a long time, and I can really appreciate your passion for the game. And you have a thirst for knowledge. You want to learn more, and you always asking good questions. So anything I can do to help a young and upcoming journalist, I'm more than happy to help you out. So I'll look forward to our next chat. I know that I'm going to get off the phone here. My wife's going to be like, "What the hell is that?"
tell her I apologize, Giulio.
That's all right, buddy. You don't have to apologize. But listen, continue to have a great off season, and look forward to our next chat.
Awesome, Giulio. I really appreciate it. For any of those of you looking out there, you can find Giulio on Twitter. He's not too active as far as tweeting, but you can usually find him on there.
Yeah.
Pharrell, if not, you'll probably see him maybe on Donnie and Dolly around maybe camp, but you will
Yeah.
be able to find or hear something that I was a big fan of, and I hope you guys do it again, is the little training camp podcast you and Moj were kind of putting out there. So you will find them on probably some of the Lions media platforms, whether that's the First and Now podcast, the radio, or just maybe some of that training camp content. So, Giulio, can't wait to talk to you again, and I really appreciate you for
Buddy.
joining me today.
No problem. Take care of yourself, Cole.
All right, later, Giulio.
Cheers, buddy.